Sound check 1 2 3. Sound check 1 2 3.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Light Rail Transit Subcommittee meeting of April 11th, 2025. We have quorum present for today's meeting, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. A reminder that all electronic devices will be switched to a non-audible function during committee meetings. And for public awareness, we have Councillor Francis joining us virtually. We also have some community members who are part of the subcommittee joining us virtually. I saw Susie Braithwaite as well as Emily Walsh. And then around the horseshoe, we have Brenda Wilson, we have Councillor Kassar, we have Councillor Tammy Huang, Councillor Cameron Crutch, we have Anthony Salemi, and Amanda, oh my goodness, Stringer, thank you, who are also community representatives at the subcommittee meeting. First item on the agenda is the approval of our agenda. May I please have a mover and seconder to approve it? Moved by Councillor Huang, seconded by Councillor Crutch. And any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, may I please get a show of hands of those in favor of the agenda? And that carries. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations to make at this point, committee members? Seeing none, we'll move on to approval of the minutes of our previous meeting. Member Andrus, you can join us at the horseshoe if you'd like. Approval of our previous LRT subcommittee meeting of February 20th. Mover and seconder, moved by Councillor Kassar, seconded by Councillor Crutch. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, can I get a show of hands? Those in favor? And those carry. Thank you. On to our number 7 item for information, 7.1 PED 25111. Hamilton LRT Municipal Betterment Process. And Director Sheikh from the LRT Project Office will provide a presentation. Just working through a little bit of tech difficulties for those of our community members online. Just bear with us until the presentation's up. Even the presentation laptop is like, hey, it's Friday afternoon. What's going on? There we go. Terrific. Thank you. Over to you, Director.
Sounds good. Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the LRT Subcommittee. My name is Abdul Sheikh, Director of Hamilton LRT Project Office. And today's presentation, I will provide an overview of the staff information report on Hamilton LRT betterment process that is in front of you today. This report provides a step-by-step approach to how the city's investment will be included in the LRT project, including key touch points with LRT subcommittee members for their approvals. So in this presentation, I will provide an overview of the municipal allocated budget for potential betterment items. And next, I will cover key requirements associated with LRT betterments. Then I will walk through the betterment process map to demonstrate the workflow activities involved. And following this, I will provide an overview of the staff draft evaluation approach that will be used when prioritizing betterment items. And in the end, I will outline the immediate next steps. So in our budget, we allocated funding for LRT project under 2 items. The first one is public realm improvements, and under this, we have allocated 9.9 million spanning 3 years, which is the city's anticipated investment for enhancing surface level improvements such as streetscape, pedestrian areas, and public spaces as part of LRT major construction. The second item is city-initiated subsurface priorities. Under this, we have allocated 10.05 million spanning 4 years, which is the city's anticipated investment for underground infrastructure improvements, mainly for utility upgrades as part of the LRT major construction. In this process, as you see in the report, we have identified 6 key requirements, which are basis scope, betterments, Metrolink third-party scope request process, LRT subcommittee council approvals, municipal infrastructure agreement and construction. So I will provide a high-level overview of each key requirement in the upcoming slide, but details are provided in the report as well. So under the basis scope, Metrolinx is required to meet 3 conditions when constructing city infrastructure. The first one is to build per the city's latest standards and guidelines. The second is on a like-for-like basis unless it has been agreed in the previous iteration of the project. And the third is adhering to legal compliance. Additionally, Metrolinx is expected to uphold their Pillar 3 public realm improvements under their community benefit and support program when developing the basis scope. And City and Metrolinx are currently working on developing the basis scope as per these requirements. In the report, you will see betterments are categorized into 2 items. The first is enhancements, which are meant for upgrades where the city is responsible only for incremental cost beyond what Metrolinx would normally deliver. And the other is addition to the basis scope, which are entirely new items and are fully funded by the city. The distinction helps clarify the city's funding responsibilities between the betterment process. The other key requirement is the Metrolinx third-party scope request, and this is Metrolinx's standard process being used for all across the projects for the city, for the city and other parties to process betterment to the basis scope of the LRT project. And per this process, the city is required to reimburse Metrolinx for any staff or consultant time spent on related investigation, analysis, or development work. These investigation costs remain payable even if either the city or Metrolinx decide to terminate the scope at a later stage of the project. Finally, it is important to note that Metrolinx reserves the right to reject any additional scope request that would impact the project schedule or any commercial terms of the LRT project. Another key requirement is municipal infrastructure agreement, which we are currently negotiating with Metrolinx. After working through Metrolinx third-party scope requests, Metrolinx and city will have to execute municipal infrastructure agreement. Through this agreement, the city will commit the funding for the detailed design, construction and administration, and other costs involved, such as inflation, financing, and HST. We are currently working on the terms of municipal infrastructure agreements. Betterment are also known as additional city infrastructure. There's another definition in the municipal infrastructure agreement. So this is a municipal betterment process from its initial identification to completion, and this is completely a staff proposal, which we are here to get feedback. It consists of 9 key steps that the staff is proposing. And as shown in orange boxes, there are 3 touch points which we are proposing with the LRT subcommittee to receive council members' feedback and approval before city commits any funds with Metrolinx. So this does provide the full transparency before we commit any funding with Metrolinx to receive the council feedback before we enter into any kind of agreement. So step 1 is today's LRT subcommittee which identified the requirements and betterment process. Under this step, we have defined the role of LRT subcommittee for betterment, and a draft evaluation criteria is also presented for members' input. And step 2 is a confirmation of basis scope. Staff is working, as I earlier mentioned, staff is working with Metrolinx to develop and confirm the basis scope per the project's requirement, as explained in my earlier slides. The basis scope will be fully funded by Metrolinx. Step 3 is the city development of betterment candidates. Under this step, LRT project office staff will work with various service areas across the city to identify betterment candidates that they would like to propose to add to major LRT construction. And after receiving input from service areas, LRT project office will examine each item to confirm if they fall under the development charges, rate, or tax-supported funds. The staff will also investigate if any additional funds are available to fund the particular item from respective service areas. Step 4 is the city and Metrolinx work together for preliminary analysis of each betterment candidate. And this is just a preliminary investigation without incurring any cost. This would require execution of 9 binding agreement with Metrolinx, what we call Metrolinx third-party scope request. And under this step, we plan to engage internal experts to assess high-level feasibility of each item without incurring any cost. Step 5 is our second touch point with LRT subcommittee that staff is proposing today. Under this stage, staff will bring forward a recommendation report which will include 3 items for approval. First is seeking approval for spending funds for the detailed investigation of selected betterment item through Metrolinx consultant. The second will be to seek approvals on staff final evaluation approach. And the third will be to seek approvals of additional reserve funds from existing budget to support future betterment candidate that could be identified by the staff at a later stage of the project. Under step 6, and after receiving council approval in step 5, the city will work with Metrolinx to initiate a third party, which will be a binding document. City will initiate a third-party scope request with Metrolinx, where the city will commit to paying Metrolinx for their efforts of investigating each betterment candidate through their external consultant. Metrolinx consultant then will complete the full assessment. And again, it's important to note that Metrolinx can reject any betterment request based on impacts to schedule or commercial terms. And under this step, the city will perform their own due diligence internally to validate Metrolinx consultant's assessment. Step 7 is a third and final touch point with LRT subcommittee, where staff will bring a recommendation report or report for consideration to present a detailed analysis of each betterment item and seek council approval for top ranked items based on staff evaluation, and seek approval to enter an agreement with Metrolinx for inclusion of these items with LRT major construction. After receiving approval, under step 8, staff will enter into a municipal infrastructure agreement with Metrolinx to include these items in major construction. Then under step 9, which is the final step, is implementation by Metrolinx. So Metrolinx will implement these betterment items as per agreed terms of the municipal infrastructure agreement. So we believe there will be several betterment items which may not fit within the allocated betterment budget. And staff is proposing to evaluate each item under evaluation, under the set evaluation criteria, and identify the top-ranked item for council consideration. So we plan to bring this information at the third touch point with LRT subcommittee, where council members can decide if they would like to approve only the top-ranked items for construction or seek an additional budget to construct all betterment items. The staff proposal on the draft evaluation approach have been Staff proposal on the draft evaluation approach have been included in the report as an appendix. Key criteria are shown on this slide. In a high-level summary, we will evaluate its alignment with council priorities and how it responds to inclusion, diversity, equity, accessibility, and our climate justice. We will also evaluate how it is being delivered. For example, there may be some opportunity where city will implement betterment instead of Metrolinx. We will also evaluate if the betterment items adds disruption to neighborhood businesses and transportation network. We will also evaluate based on its cost, both capital and operating cost. Location is also important. For example, are these considered within city lanes or Metrolinx lanes like guideways and traction power substation? And the last one is who owns the assets? For example, if you are adding enhancement to stop, then those betterment items will be owned by Metrolinx, not the city. So these are the evaluation criteria what we are proposing today. In addition, we are also assessing whether any need of weighting factors to be applied. We plan to present the final evaluation approach and the second touch point with LRT subcommittee to seek the approval. However, we welcome any input you may have at this stage so that we can refine our evaluation process. This concludes the detail on the process. In terms of immediate next steps, so we will continue working closely with Metrolinx to finalize the key requirements that will guide betterment planning and delivery. Staff will report back to LRT subcommittee with a list of betterment candidates, results of the preliminary assessment, and the final evaluation approach. We will also continue negotiating the municipal infrastructure agreement with Metrolinx. This process works well for well-planned betterment items because we are still in the planning phase. We will work with the Metrolinx to develop a second betterment process to address time-sensitive requests, because we believe there will be some time-sensitive requests during construction. And again, in-field adjustment and requests with minor or neutral impacts on budget and schedule. We believe there may be some very minor item which we may like to add to the project. So there should be another process where we can take benefit of adding these minor betterment item with the project. So this concludes my presentation, and I would like to thank all the members for their time, and I and my team would be happy to respond to any question you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Would you like to respond to the questions right there at the podium, or do you want a moment to sit down?
I'm
It's up
okay
to you.
here.
Okay, perfect. First up, we have Councillor Crutch, followed by Councillor Huang. If any of the other committee members want to indicate, please do so. Councillor Crutch.
Thanks for the presentation. There's a step I think that's missing here. I think it's an important step to add in, which is engagement with councillors' offices. I think that it's great to have lots of staff input on this, but I think there are sometimes things that councillors are able to see or know about with respect to these changes that may not be super obvious to staff, especially when it comes to the tight corridor on Ward 2, where frankly every meter matters. I think that's a step that should be included either after consulting with staff, before, at the same time, whenever. My question at this point is really about the financial model. So when I look at the two different amounts that are being used here to determine betterments, right? I understand the two separate amounts. What is this financial modeling based on in terms of coming up with these amounts? Like, from my perspective, based on the presentation and the information I have in front of me, they seem a little arbitrary. So I'm trying to figure out how we understand that to either be enough money for what we want to do, what we're actually targeting the money for. Like, I can't assume it's totally arbitrary, so I'm understanding how we developed a model to come up with that amount, because when we look at the whole project, which is a multi-billion-dollar project, this represents a very, very, very small drop in the bucket in terms of trying to make betterments on that project. So can you explain that financial model to me?
Yeah. Through you, Madam Chair, Councillor Crutch. In terms of your first question, so what we have shown is really the minimum information, like minimum touch point with LRT subcommittees. So there will be lots of other, information, like, for example, we are meeting in step 3 LRT subcommittee. Before that, there will be some stakeholder consultation. Those are not shown here. There will be touch point with the councillors. That is not shown, but what we are showing here, these are the minimum criteria in terms of process map, which we will follow, but there will be, I can imagine there will be lots of stakeholder consultation. Sometime, like there are some improvements within the International Village BIS. We may be meeting with the stakeholder, and then we will be meeting with the council to before bringing that information to the LRT subcommittee. In terms of financial model, this budget was allocated in the previous term of the council back in 2023 budget. So that's what we have, which is already allocated in 2023, 24, 25, and in some cases 26, right? So we are working with whatever the allocated budget is. Once we have that, whole evaluation of all the betterment candidates, we will bring that information to the council. And as I mentioned here, that we will try to be within. There will be a number of items. We will try to be within that allocated budget we have, but we will have other option that if council decides to fund all of the betterment item, then we can add requests for additional budget. So that's what we are proposing. We are just working out whatever the allocated budget we have on this project.
Counselor?
Yeah, that's my question, and I'm still confused about it because it seems a little bit cart before the horse because I don't understand what the model is. Though I understand where the money came from, right? But what's the financial model? For instance, if I know that I'm going to be buying a fleet of electric vehicles for the city, I have a general sense of how much the fleet costs, and I make the budget tailored to the expense I'm trying to allocate funds for. What we're doing here, it seems like, is we don't know what the betterment projects are going to be at all, and we're just picking a number, a number that we think seems reasonable, and then we'll go from there. Whereas I would assume we have some sense of what the betterment projects are. We're mapping this against other light rail transit projects. We've seen what Metrolinx has done with betterment and others. It's like, what's the basis or analysis for the financial model?
And through Madam Chair, when we allocated this budget, Councillor, back in 2022, we actually looked at the other municipalities. Some municipalities, they have not added any betterment because they completely rely on Metrolinx delivery because they think their basic scope is really enough to deliver what they require. But there's some municipality they have added, and that's the reason we came around the same budget. But I just wanted to mention that when we are discussing the betterment candidates, we will leave the budget aside, right? So we will just talk about what items they would like to add, and we will evaluate and we will bring these information to the LRT subcommittee. We will be not looking at the budget, we will be just discussing the service area to see what item they would like to add to the project, and we will bring those for their full transparency awareness to the LRT subcommittee.
Counselor, so placeholder and then opportunity for more clarity.
So thanks. My last comment through you, just to put it out there publicly, I guess. I'm nervous about this because what this sets up is a budget and then a conversation during the budget where we're going to try to allocate money for maybe more betterments. And we may not have enough money to achieve that. I understand what you're saying is put the budget aside. So I'm just foreshadowing conversations that are going to happen around the budget process and just wanting to make sure that when we have those discussions, we actually say to the councillors around the table and to the people making decisions about the budget, look, this was just a base funding amount we put in kind of based on a mathematical understanding of what other municipalities have done, but it wasn't tailored to the actual betterments, because I think people will think there was this huge financial model put together and that this should be sufficient to make the betterments happen when it may not be. So just flagging all that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Huang?
Thank you, Chair. Are we allowed to talk about Appendix A at all? Or do we have to wait until after the presentation to talk about the Appendix A and the
I'm
report?
okay. Yeah, through Madam Chair, I'm okay with if you would like to
yes, go
discuss.
ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you. So in Appendix A, I do see that you have split it out into the council priorities, including sustainable economic and ecological development, safe and thriving neighborhoods, and then trust and responsibility or responsiveness from municipalities, which is exactly those three. But when I go and I read into the next two columns, the next one is desired outcome and then the following one is measure. The one for facilitating growth of key sectors and enhancing city's reputation as a center of, and then you've only used three measures, culture, sport, and tourism. So where's economic development there? Because I think that there's a real opportunity with leveraging the subsurface betterments to look at economic development, and also how do we facilitate more, say, businesses or opportunities for businesses to expand and grow along the corridor. So is there an opportunity to also look at the measurements as they relate to economic development?
Through you, Madam Chair, when we developed this Appendix A, we actually took what the council priority, exactly same wordings, right, if I'm not mistaken, exactly same wording, what the measures are and what the dimensions are. So we took exactly what the council has already approved. But this is really a good suggestion that there will be some additional, for example, you talked about last time the communication fiber optic, right, which will be providing the future revenues for the city. So I'm not sure if, I don't know if Chris, if you have any input, if this item is considered under somewhere. If not, then we will definitely add somewhere in an evaluation for the future economic benefit.
Through the chair, yes, it can be accommodated. This was really just meant to be a starting point.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. Then to put a bug in your ear then, perhaps we can look at it from, I am very interested in all of the betterments, but in my questions today is really about subsurface betterments, because I think there's a real opportunity to talk about it. Empty conduit so we can facilitate better fiber optics in the future, empty conduit so we can better facilitate energy grid modernization, because those all require you to dig and daylight, and if we've already just spent $3.4 billion on this infrastructure, there's no reason for us to dig below surface. So if we can create opportunities for potentially return on investment, and all we've done is just at least provided access. And I think that that's just when I'm thinking about like the future growth of our city, people are gonna want to have access to conduit for, could be internet, could be whatever, Internet of Things, it could be all of those, but also energy grid and opportunities to plug into different aspects along the route so we can, I don't know, offer them alternative energy generation, like if it's like the opportunity to put solar panels, but they need the solar panels to connect into something. So I would like to see in the evaluation a potential return on investment sort of calculation. So then that way on the back end, we can back of the napkin say, if we were to put in this kind of conduit, then we may be able to get this kind of return in the future should we want to have other energy providers come in and use the same conduit or infrastructure.
Through the Madam Chair, I think this is the whole purpose of, I think lots of very good suggestions, right? So we will definitely include that item, return of an investment. In terms of how far we will go, in terms of calculations and other things, that will really rely on lots of other service area. And sometimes we are in a constant. So what we were thinking that we will provide a commentary with each item, what are the benefit, but in terms of whole calculations, how much exact return, right? So yeah, but this is really a good suggestion. That's the whole purpose of this one. We will amend to include the return of investment of any other betterment candidate for our city.
And then through you, my last question is, when it comes to the last part of this, where it's the analysis, initiative, and recommendation, do we absolutely need to have a city department take the lead on this, or is this something that we can feasibly open up to the community to provide that? I think about HCE Telecom, for example. They are not a city department, however, they are a part of the city, and then they may want to provide some input into access. So is this something that we can open up to the community to even get like requests for proposals or something like that?
Yeah, through the Madam Chair, right now we were actually relying on internal expertise, but if we are working with subject matter experts from other divisions, they may advise, and then I think the idea is we can discuss with those stakeholders. But right now, what we were imagining, this is going to be all with internal expertise we can have, but we will be discussing with service area that if there is any need of discussing with other stakeholders, we will discuss, right?
Sorry, I do have one last question because Director brought up something interesting too in my brain. Is there, and when we talk about the ecological development, sustainable ecological development, and it does talk about accelerating our response to climate change, so it talks about climate resistance and climate readiness. Is there anything around climate? I want to say something to the effect of like, actually, no. Climate resistance is feels like that's the right terminology. So I'm sorry about that. My brain was working in overload, and I just couldn't get through the next little bit. Anyway, thank you,
Counselor,
Chair.
sometimes we have to verbalize our thoughts to get clear on them. I can appreciate that. Next up on the speakers list is Member Andrus, followed by Member Walsh.
Thank you very much through the chair. Obviously I have some challenges with the way that this base scope is being presented, and especially concerned around the city and Metrolinx staff are currently establishing that base scope that the project will fund and deliver, especially around the quote unquote Pillar 3 public realm improvements, and how much opportunities there's going to be for community to be engaged around what those are. A lot of these discussions seem to be going on behind closed doors with city staff and with Metrolinx staff around potential ideas that the city might like based on some of its policies and processes, but very little on what might be beneficial to individual neighborhoods where these things may be installed. So I'm just curious if you've heard from Metrolinx, if once they've decided on their kind of Pillar 3 items or Pillar 3 budget 4 items, that they're going to come back to the community to do some kind of engagement on, well, we can get you this item A or this item B, or this is what you're getting, here it is. I feel like there's been a lot of aspirations and hopes by folks from this project around what might happen in their community. So that's my first question.
So first question is around community input to the Pillar 3 priorities.
Yes.
Yeah, so through Madam Chair, Mr. Andrews, we are actually working with Metrolinx, and as you know, like Metrolinx leads the community engagement. What we understand, they will have a community engagement program. They have already done all the formal public consultation through the TPAP process, right? So, which was done in 2017. All the formal consultation was done. They were properly documented and other things. What I understand, they will continue to meet with individual stakeholders. That could be the BIA and others, where they will be seeking input or providing information what they are designing and those kind of things. So there will be some community awareness, community engagement, which will be led by Metrolinx. In terms of your other question about the budget they have, so that's what we are working with Metrolinx to see what their basic scope is, right? Because they have a commitment to deliver Pillar 3, public realm improvement. So we would like to really see, what actually they are bringing into the public realm, so that we can, on top of it, we can look into what betterment candidates we have to add, right? So we don't have any information whether there is any specific budget has been allocated or not, but we are currently working with Metrolinx to.
Yeah, so some of that timeline, I think, especially amongst community benefit members, but the community at large is a little confusing. As you know, that document was done quite a number of years ago. There's been a lot of changes since 2017 in terms of the types of engagement that were done, and even the style and method in which we do engagement has shifted significantly. So that was a concern. And that brings me to my second question around engagement throughout these steps. You've listed the LRT subcommittee a lot as a place for decisions like this to land, but I don't see a lot of opportunities for Engage Hamilton or for reaching out into the broader community to start talking about, especially after we learn what Metrolinx is providing, what are the opportunities that the city they might not be able to afford to, but at least where you could present in a report to say, okay, well, we heard from the communities, they would like X, Y, Z, but it's way too much, but here's the costs, and then allow political decision makers and residents to make that choice from there. I don't see a lot of those inflection points here along this entire step ladder here to get that community input piece.
And through Madam Chair, Mr. Andrews, this is exactly what Councillor Crouch was asking. So we have provided the minimum step, but we will be meeting with individual stakeholder as needed basis. And then there is another opportunity when we bring that information to LRT subcommittee, then you can ask staff to report back and go to the like individual, like if you are missing some stakeholder and other things, right? So the second step, when we are coming to the LRT subcommittee, you can ask the staff or provide a motion that we can go back and do more consultation. But we will try our best to meet with, just like Accessibility Advisory Committee, we plan to meet with them. And there are lots of other stakeholders which we are already planning to meet with them.
Okay.
But if
And,
you're-
it looks like my 5 minutes are up, so second time speaker, if you don't mind.
Thank you. Next up is Member Walsh.
Thank you. Through the chair, most of my concerns have already been addressed, which is fantastic. Councillor Wang mentioned that there was some missing measures of success on the evaluation framework, and I just wanted to highlight the measures of success for economic development, including streamlining services for small businesses and new businesses along the route. So I'd love to see that included as well on that evaluation framework. And then, similar to some other comments as well, I was hoping that you could speak more to the details that fall between steps 2 and 3, particularly how the like-for-like replacements are being quantified, and if there will be an itemized list made available to subcommittee or to the public in general about what the base scope does include. And then again, just echoing the call for some broad engagement on possible betterments along the road as well.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, so as I mentioned, these are the minimum step. As soon as we have more information available from Metrolinx, we plan to bring, for example, what we understand they are planning to release public-facing RCD. So we were thinking to provide that information, what does it mean, which technically has a basis scope as well. So there could be a 2A, 2B, where we will be providing some more additional information before we seek council recommendation. As soon as we have more information available from Metrolinx, we will definitely bring to the LRT subcommittee and maybe council as well.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. And back to second time speakers, Member Andrus.
Thank you very much. And I know your office does a lot of work within the city with other departments and other offices around this project, especially identifying some of those subsurface capital works. I'm curious where, and it's not necessarily represented in this report, on where those opportunities for enhancements or upgrades, especially growth-related ones, may possibly be tied to this project, especially since Metrolinx is paying to open up the ground. There are outstanding lists on the public works lists that come down to public washrooms and more water fountains and more trees and more green spaces, more pop-up I mean, there's a laundry list of kind of wishes. There's a new parks master plan that's just been released. So I'm wondering if, as this process evolves, we could quantify that in some way of saying, yes, we may have to bite the bullet and spend even $100 million on LRT-related enhancements, but we're also saving X million because Metrolinx is doing some of the pre-works for us and some of the connections to the pipes that are already open, et cetera. So I'm just curious, is that on the roadmap for future presentations?
And through the Madam Chair, yes, so when we mentioned in the report that LRT Project Office will be consulting all the service area, we will actually make a special request every service area that would you like to add anything? And, if there are any recommendation, Mr. Andrus, if you can bring forward, then maybe we can include those recommendations. By the way, these are the information coming from LRT subcommittee if you like to add or something, but we plan to reach out to the all service area to get their input if they would like to add and to take benefit. But everybody knows that there will be excavation, whole road, this is the perfect benefit if somebody wants to add these kind of improvement, what you just mentioned.
Thank you very much, because I agree there's a lot of opportunities, whether it be the neighborhood-based traffic safety audits that are being done, pedestrian crossings, there's a whole lot of things that are going to intercede with us tearing up 14 kilometers of the city. And so it would be nice to see that quantified and represented for the general public and for other councillors, say at GIC. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee member, Member Dunnett.
Thank you. Through the chair, I think fully in line with Councillor Wang and the need to minimize disruptions, and while respecting the importance of consultations throughout this whole process, I'll ask the question that I think we have to ask at every single one of these meetings until we get there. We've got a nice betterments process map here. Do we have any specific dates that are tied to that, and when we will in fact get shovels in the ground? And I think that's my only question today.
Through the Madam Chair, Member Danette, unfortunately we don't have, because it's highly relying on Metrolink's procurement process, design information, and they have not provided any timeline where we can attach with this process map.
Thank you, and Member Salemi.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation. Just a question around step 3 in the report. The preliminary betterment costs will be developed in consideration of DCs as well as tax-supported funds. Just wondering if you could expand on how the nature of those enhancements and the connection to DCs would kind of be made. Like, is it part of a DC study, or is there kind of some back and forth between this budget allocation and then the DCs? Just wondering how that works.
Through Madam Chair, Member, just when we allocated this budget, and if you look at the details, it actually allocated from 50% DC and 50% from tax or rate budget. So it's our job, when the item comes, we will see whether does this item qualified under the development charges, right? So that's what we intended to do. When somebody is identifying that betterment candidates, we will have to do initial analysis whether it fits in the DC, or it fits under rate, or it fits under the tax-rated budget, right? So that's what we meant to do analysis before we recommend to the LRT subcommittee.
Thank you. Any other comments on the evaluative framework? And then Director, if you could, if it's not happening more here, is there an opportunity for committee members to feed in more towards that evaluative framework?
And through the Madam Chair, this is, that's the reason we did not bring as a recommendation or as a, report
It's
for
not
consideration,
final.
right?
Yeah.
So that's the whole purpose. If you have any feedback, just email us. Like Councillor Wang's suggestion was really great one, about the economic benefit. If there is anything which we are missing, like what we think we have done, like lots of thorough job, but we might be missing certain step. If you have any input and a process map or an evaluation framework, do let us know, and then we will incorporate as feasible.
Thank you. Okay, so that exhausts our speakers list. And we will now move to have a mover and seconder to receive the presentation and the report. Moved by Councillor Cassar, second by Councillor Crutch. All those in favor, show of hands. Thank you, and that carries. On to item 8 in our agenda, which is items for consideration. First and only report is 8.1 PED 24087B, recruiting additional LRT subcommittee advisors in order to facilitate consideration of climate justice. Director Lukasik of the Climate Change Initiatives will introduce the presentation, and then we'll have our project manager actually walk us through it as well. Over to you, Director.
Thank you, Chairperson Nan and members of the LRT subcommittee. Just very quickly, back in November, we were in front of you with a report respecting recruitment of additional non-voting advisors to the LRT subcommittee to support consideration of climate justice. And we were requested to go and look at various governance models to make that happen. So this is our report back to you today with those details, and Beatrice is going to present an overview to you now. Thank you. I should have introduced myself, and Beatrice can introduce herself at the mic. So for those who don't know me, I'm Linda Lukasik, Director of the Office of Climate Change Initiatives.
Okay, so Beatrice Ikoko, Project Manager with the Office of Climate Change Initiatives in the GM's Office of Planning and Economic Development. I must apologize, my voice is a bit off today. Good afternoon, members of the LRT subcommittee, staff, and public. I'm here to discuss report PED 24087B, citywide, recruiting additional LRT subcommittee advisors in order to facilitate consideration of climate justice in the implementation phase of Hamilton's Light Rail Transit Infrastructure Project, LRT. So, report PED 24087B follows PED 24087A from November 2024. It presents 4 governance options and assessments for the LRT subcommittee to consider for the inclusion of frontline community voices that can speak to climate justice. So a quick overview again of climate justice. You've heard me talk about this concept. So climate justice really involves outcomes that address equity challenges surrounding climate change. It integrates equity and social justice consideration of climate justice and solutions. There are 3 dimensions of climate justice that we are focused on here, summarized on this slide, and they are the bedrock of a climate justice framework being developed by the Office of Climate Change Initiatives. And they are recognitional equity, recognizing and prioritizing the needs of and opportunities for frontline communities who are at risk of increased vulnerability or have been historically marginalized, underrepresented. Then the next dimension is distributive equity, distributing climate action benefits and diminishing burdens on diverse frontline communities, and then procedural equity, factoring in municipal decision-making processes and who's involved in these processes. So now this report addresses procedural equity. Slide, okay. So 4 governance options that we assessed. 1, recruit additional non-voting community advisors to the LRT subcommittee. 2, establish a working group. 3, recruit additional non-voting advisors to the LRT subcommittee and establish a working group in future if deemed necessary. And 4, strike a task force. But before I go into further detail on these 4 governance options, I just want to note that since Metrolinx is leading the project, much consideration was given to the city's role when assembling these options. Overall, staff considered the operationalization, benefits and challenges associated with ongoing administration and effective community involvement for each option. 3, these assessments were informed by research and by input provided through internal and external consultations. Office of Climate Change Initiatives consulted with city staff, staff in other Canadian municipalities, local community partners, various subject matter experts and researchers. The city clerk was consulted to help identify which options might require amendments to the LRT committee's terms of reference, and also to understand requirements for additional resources to support each option. As well, the Climate Justice and Community Engagement Working Group of the city's Climate Change Advisory Committee provided feedback as found in Appendix B. So on to the assessments. The first one, add non-voting community advisors to the LRT subcommittee. So high level, some challenges for this option included the daytime meetings and volunteer nature of the role, which may preclude participation of some committee members. There's also the formal nature of the LRT subcommittee that could also be a concern for some. On the other hand, benefits to this option are such that new community advisors participate directly at the LRT subcommittee, providing input as project elements are considered and also contributing to the normalization of climate justice considerations as part of an ongoing LRT subcommittee's project-related deliberations. Okay, oops, did I? No, I skipped a slide. Okay, option 2, establish a working group. So here, challenges related to this option include a concern that the ongoing operation of the working group provides a heavier burden on volunteer advisors and would also likely require some basic staff support. As well, a working group, while reporting to the LRT subcommittee, is arm's length from the direct discussion at the main table. And when it comes to the benefits, staff note in this option that more community participants can be accommodated. A working group setting is less formal, creating a more flexible space where participation may happen more easily. And also scheduling around meetings could also help with this option, participation. Okay. The next option, option 3, recruit additional non-voting community advisors to LRT subcommittee and establish working group in the future if deemed necessary. Now, In this option, we have the same challenges as we do in option 1 and 2, in that daytime meetings and volunteer nature of the role could preclude participation for some new advisors, and the formal nature of the LRT subcommittee that could also be a concern. However, this approach brings the benefits of option 1 and 2, including bringing new community voices directly to the LRT subcommittee, while also providing an informal space for community discussion and input. And option 4, Striker Task Force. Our challenge with this option, one challenge was, well, it is a formal entity that requires support of staff, including clerks. Again, while reporting to the LRT subcommittee, this option is arm's length from the direct discussion at that main table. Similar concerns as previous options in terms of its formal structure that may make participation challenging for some community members, and also meeting task force expectations could be challenging given that Metrolinx leads the project. But benefits of this model are that a task force creates its own agendas and work plans related to the LRT subcommittees or council's defined topics and issues, and task force reviews information and provides feedback, and they can recommend for implementation. And finally, there's no set limit to the number of members that can be recruited to serve on a task force. So based on the analysis undertaken, option 3, recruit additional non-voting community advisors to the LRT subcommittee and establish a working group in future if deemed necessary, is recommended as a governance option that best facilitates procedural equity, normalization of climate justice considerations, fairness, and inclusive participation, and that can be operationalized in a relatively straightforward manner without additional staff and financial resources. New advisors can bring forward their specific interests and concerns of the communities they represent, for example, safety concerns during construction, connectivity, affordability, accessibility, and elements of design, as well as opening the doors to recognition and distributive equity. And a scenario where a working group could be struck is when there's more extensive direct community input is needed, such as during the detailed streetscape design phase of the project. And just a word on recruitment processes. The recruitment process for new advisors would occur by invitation from voting members of the LRT subcommittee in alignment with the subcommittee's terms of reference and consistent with the process that was used to recruit existing advisors. Consulting with the clerk's office, the recruitment process would entail that staff would advise and support the subcommittee in identifying and determining which organizations to invite to participate on the subcommittee. That would be via an advisor, of course, and you have seen Appendix D with an updated sampling of relevant agencies and organizations. Once agreed by voting subcommittee members, formal invitations would be sent providing more details around the purpose and mandate of the subcommittee, including recognizing that the mandate of the LRT subcommittee is to focus on implementation of the LRT project. And so inviting each organization to provide the committee with a representative of their organization. So this brings me to the recommendations, and I can read them. Let's go do that right now. That an amendment to the Light Rail Transit Subcommittee's terms of reference include additional non-voting advisors to ensure that the subcommittee's composition reflects the community from a climate justice point of view, be approved as follows. And we have the membership that was, this section is the same as it previously was, so I won't read it because of in terms of time. But continuing on to the next slide, the main piece that is highlighted is that non-voting community advisors that reflect the community from a climate justice point of view. These advisors can include, but are not limited to, the urban indigenous community, Black community, women, gender diverse individuals, 2S LGBTQIA+, youth, seniors, newcomers, refugees, persons with disabilities, and low-income Hamiltonians. And the recommendation B continues that staff be directed to proceed with efforts to work with subcommittee members to recruit up to 6 non-voting community advisors representing local organizations that offer support to frontline communities to the Light Rail Transit Subcommittee, and to establish a working group in future if deemed necessary. And that brings me to the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Project Manager. Before we open up for Q&A and an opportunity for non-voting members to also indicate if they have questions, as well as counselors. If you wanted to grab a seat back at the bench so you can answer them off your feet, you're welcome to do so. First up, we'll have Member Salemi, but if you can just hang on your question until our project manager is back at the bench.
Thank you for your presentation. This is sort of unrelated, but just noticing in the terms of reference, it says the triple HBA. We're now the we HBA. So just if there's going to be an edit to the terms of reference, if we could make that change.
Okay, and noted. Thank you. Any questions on the presentation or report recommendations? Thank you, Councillor Huang, then Councillor Kassar.
I'm highly supportive of this. Perhaps you can just share with us why option 3 in particular and the idea of recruiting 6 new non-voting members. And also a working group. Seems like there's a lot of work there. So how will this ideally roll out in your opinion? Through you, Chair.
Thank you for the question, through the chair. The option that staff have chosen is because it is the closest option to procedural equity. Now, as the LRT project progresses and implementation progresses, and it's found that there are really specific issues that need to be further explored, then a working group could be struck. So again, there's that flexibility there, that if it's deemed necessary, then it would make sense at that point to strike up a working group. And as far as the number of new non-advisors to the LRT subcommittee, again, this is a number that we try to create a balance so that not to overwhelm the LRT subcommittee, but at the same time to have the opportunity to have the flexibility of intersection. There's an intersectionality of some of the concerns as far as like the different dimensions that we're looking at here. So I think I hope I'm answering that question. And I don't know if Linda or anyone else has further clarification.
Maybe just quickly through the chair, just to echo what Beatrice said, just wanting to introduce a manageable number. So we're looking at up to 6, and it would be the decision of the LRT subcommittee to determine how many, and staff can certainly advise there. But as Beatrice is saying, we're acknowledging too that there are organizations that are effectively, interacting with multiple frontline communities. So, I think the selection could be informed by that as well as a way to manage numbers around the table.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. And so what would be the process moving forward? Should we say yes to this today? Can you give us a sense of what next steps looks like?
Through the chair, next steps would be that the staff support the LRT subcommittee in, first of all, engaging the proposed, there's a list of frontline community serving organizations, and so staff would be supporting the LRT in making those selections as far as helping with writing a letter, helping with identifying what groups we could approach. And so from there, it would be a matter of sending out those formal invitations. And then, of course, there would be criteria, and the terms of reference would have to be very, shared, the mandate, the purpose, the role of the advisor, new non-voting advisors, and possibly this could happen by the fall of 2025.
Thank you very much. Those are all my questions.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up, we have Councillor Kassar, followed by Councillor Francis.
Asked and answered.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Francis.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. The report states that these advisors can include, but but are not limited to. Can you tell me who's excluded from becoming a member?
Through the chair. Exclusion, I believe it's up to the LRT subcommittee to make that decision. As far as I can tell.
Counselor, is there a specific group that you're just wanting to make sure is included?
So I'm just trying to understand this, Chair. There's nobody going to be excluded from being allowed to join this?
I think through the chair to Councillor Francis, the idea would be that anybody who's approached, any organization that's approached would be supportive of the LRT implementation phase and would be working to find a representative person to that supports the phase 2 implementation. So I don't, maybe I'm not understanding the question as far as like who would be excluded. Anybody that's not, I would say, not supportive of the mandate of the terms of reference. I hope that clarifies your question.
Counselor?
Thanks, Chair. What I'm just trying to flesh out here, why can't we just change the language to say we're looking for qualified people? Well, it seems odd to me that we'd identify specific groups for being inclusive of everybody. And not discriminating against anybody based on race, gender, etc. So I don't understand, if nobody's being excluded here, why is this before us in this manner? Why would we have it like this?
Counselor Kassar, can I just ask, did you have an opportunity? Oh, sorry, Counselor Francis, my apologies. Yeah, peripheral vision versus who I'm looking at. Did you have an opportunity to review the definition of climate justice and equity that the recommendations are based in?
Did I have a, yes, of course. This is not something that's new to us. It's something we deal with on a regular basis.
Yeah. So the recommendation identified by staff, the organizations fulfill that definition of climate justice and those definitions of equity that are embedded at the top end of the report. So this is staff's recommendation in terms of those organizations and stakeholders in our community that could be invited to identify individuals who could serve on this committee to fulfill that mandate.
I understand. I'm just trying, thank you, I appreciate that. I'm just trying to understand. It seems odd to identify specific groups. Like I said, if we're being inclusive of everyone, why are we centering out specific groups of people, and if we're not discriminating based on race, gender, etc.? So anybody, then my question is anybody allowed to, through this climate justice lens, is anybody allowed to join the subcommittee?
Okay, so based on the terms of reference of this committee, the committee makeup beyond council representatives is made up of individuals and organizations that have been invited to this table. The recommendation from staff is to continue that process of invitational, and staff have put forward a list of recommended organizations that meet the mandate of the specific scope and lens that we as a committee have requested to be part of the deliberations of the subcommittee. And so I would just say to you as the chair of the committee and just getting clarity around the recommendation that's before us, if you have recommendations of other organizations that you don't see here as frontline organizations that have the ability to bring that lens to this table, then please do let staff know.
Okay, so I'm serious, I'm not clear yet, because is anybody being excluded? It seems like a pretty simple question.
Through the chair, maybe just to add a little bit more clarity here, particularly with the focus on climate justice, it's that acknowledgement that we are not all equally impacted by the climate crisis. So part of what staff are aiming to achieve here is to ensure that there are voices at the table who can help to shine a light on those impacts. So it is an acknowledgement that we are affected in different ways and wanting to ensure that there are voices at the table that can speak to impacts of that nature. And I think fair to say, you know, there are organizations who have specific experience in working with frontline community members who have been impacted in that way and can bring that additional perspective to the table. And I think at the end of the day, any sort of improvements that might come out of listening to that input, I think the good thing is it would bring benefits right across the community to anyone using the system, living near the system. So I think positive outcomes that way, but just acknowledging that reality that the impacts are not equal. I hope that helps.
If I can assist,
yep, go ahead.
sorry, Steve Robichaud, Acting General Manager. The intent of the language counselor is not to exclude any group, but in the event it has been determined by the LRT subcommittee that a group has been inadvertently excluded or does not, that group self-identifies and feels they do not fit into one of the pre-identified categories, it would not exclude their ability to come forward and ask to be an advisor sitting on the committee. So the short answer is we are trying in the staff recommendation not to exclude anyone, but in the event or that possibility that we inadvertently have excluded a group based on their self-identification, then it would not preclude their ability to participate if they felt that they did not participate or identify with one of the groups that we have listed in the staff recommendation. That's just why we said including but not limited to, because there may be a group that, like I said, that comes forward that crosses over or is unique and has not been, in an effort to be inclusive, we are attempting to be as generic, not precluding their ability to participate. I hope that clarifies this for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor
Yeah, thank
Francis?
you, Chair, and through you, I will say that does clarify quite a bit for me. But to me, and I'll finish with the statement here, there's no point of a committee if we're just going to make everybody who wants to join an official advisor. Our whole job as counselors is to listen to these voices and in this report that are listed here and represent that when making decisions. This is redundant, and I won't be supporting this recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. That exhausts our speakers list. Oh, okay, my apologies. Just for a second, if I could confirm as chair, anybody else seeking to speak on the list, on this report? Okay, Member Andrus.
I did notice on the Appendix D, page 1 of 1 here of the report, that it says below are some suggestions for local groups by equity category that the LRT subcommittee with staff support can consider contacting. I also know that there are some groups that we have dealt with before that may have not made the cut on this list. So I just want to echo those comments that when staff is reaching out to these groups, maybe asking those groups if there are other additional suggestions that they have and that they can make. I don't think this is by any means an exhaustive list, and I think the instructions to staff are quite clear that these are some suggestions. The one thing that I really wanted to touch on, though, that kind of wasn't raised in this report is that even advisory committees have small budgets, and one of the equity pieces that we don't talk about a lot is a lot of the groups that I see on this on this list get consulted over and over and over again with very limited staff and very limited budgets and very limited time. So for us to draw on them to bring their voices forward, possibly without remuneration, lunches, staff. I didn't see a budget item attached to this like there is for our advisory committees. And I just wanted to flag that for the other members of the committee. Other than that, I don't get a vote either way. So, it doesn't matter, but those were some of the concerns that I had as a community member.
Thank you. Okay, no further speakers on the list. Do we have a mover and seconder? No. May I please have a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Crutch, seconded by Councillor Huang. If we may now move to an electronic vote, as this is an item for consideration. That carries. Thank you. Committee members, are there any notices of motion? Seeing none, then that brings us to adjournment, that there's no further business, and I get to just declare it. You don't have to vote anymore. We're done. Thank you. Thank you to all the staff and for your support and responses to the questions and all the preparation for today's meeting. Appreciate it. And thank you, community members.